Well, that is a very tough question to answer, actually, because it's both true and not true. So the not true is Nixon definitely was, involved with the Watergate cover-up. He had definitely encouraged his campaign aides and so on to do illegal things. He was on tape saying, break into this, find out what's in the safe, all this sort of stuff. He's also on tape talking about getting money to pay off the Watergate burglars. It's absolutely, so he's banged to rights, basically. There's no doubt about that. I mean, there's no way you can argue those things away. On the other hand, it is true that previous presidents, Democratic presidents, let's say, had not been, paragons of virtue. It's true that Lyndon Johnson was no stranger to dirty tricks. I mean, the bugging, the taping equipment, just to give a tiny example, the taping equipment in the White House was installed under Johnson, not under Nixon. I mean, Johnson's very first election when he was, in Texas, there'd been all sorts of ballot stuffing. Nixon also probably had grounds to think that in 1960, when he'd made his first bid for the presidency against John F. Kennedy, that in 1960, there had been dodgy practices there, both in Texas and in Chicago.
They say
Illinois.
the cows voted in Texas for the Democrats.
Exactly. So I suppose what you would say is this is par for the course in American politics to some degree. I mean, this is not, you can sort of faint about this and say how dreadful it is, but I mean, most hardened American polls knew this was how it worked. The other thing I would say, though, is that, in Washington in particular, people are not inclined to press this against, for example, the Kennedys in a way that they were against Nixon. There's a sort of element of elite opinion, if you like, in America that always thinks of Nixon as a parvenu, as kind of vulgar, as he's not as charming as Kennedy, and so Nixon, he never gets away with it. I mean, it's a dreadful thing to say, but he kind of looks like a crook, and people love to pin all this stuff on him. So for his opponents, they're delighted by it. Kennedy, of course, who had was no stranger to kind of illegality. But Kennedy has the kind of grace and charm and stuff that mean that people will forgive a lot of sins. I suppose it's a bit like, people will forgive, people don't. Bill Clinton was a charming, charismatic person. I mean, he behaved pretty abominably, but a lot of people were prepared to give him a free ride because they thought, Clinton is a bit of a dog, this kind of thing. But if he'd looked like Nixon, they probably wouldn't have given him the same leeway. So sort of personality in a weird way, I think, plays a part in these things.